Hello world of YouTube and welcome to another Carversation. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite things ever. You guys already know, Star Wars. Because recently Bob Iger, who is one of the big head guys at Disney, published a book. And in this book, he talks about some of the things involving George Lucas and the buyout and, you know, his feelings on the whole scenario. And it's telling, and it makes a lot of sense, because in that section of the book, he talks about how Lucas felt betrayed, that Disney didn't really use any of his ideas for this upcoming trilogy and instead made their own thing. And I could understand why. I could also understand why Disney didn't go with his ideas, but when you tell someone you're gonna use them as a consultant and all that sort of stuff, and you don't really do that, it feels really disrespectful. Which, I mean, Disney didn't have to. You know, Disney is a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and they paid George Lucas a fuck ton of money for Star Wars. So, again, they didn't really have to do anything, and George Lucas is set for life, so it's not like I'm like, woe is him for not having his baby tended to. But it is upsetting to hear, just because George Lucas, while having tried to be successful outside of Star Wars, the guy just can't get away from it. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't think, while this new trilogy of Star Wars films has been complicated and has had its own setbacks and tumultuous production, I think it's still turned out better than what George Lucas might have been wanting to do with his planned trilogy for 7, 8, 9, because it just, from what I've heard about what it's supposed to be, it sounds not good. It pulls from elements from the prequels that people didn't like the midichlorians, to double down on stuff like that, while seeming to be very George Lucas. It's not, I don't think that's a good idea, you know? While it may have made things tie more to the original trilogy outside of nostalgia, and, you know, using the original trilogy as a sort of bait for people to go see these new films, or for some people to go see these new films, it's still just, it feels more indebted to the original trilogy than the prequels. And I think that's the important thing, and I think that's why Disney did what they did, because they knew if they were to do anything with the prequels, these new movies weren't going to make money, because people don't like the prequels. You know, me not liking the prequels, that's not a hot take. That's a pretty standard take. People hate the fucking prequels to Star Wars. They are universally panned. You know, while Episode 3 has some redeeming qualities, it's still not as good as A New Hope. And again, while I have issues with this third trilogy, as far as what I'm assuming is going to be the train wreck of Rise of the Skywalker, because when your big selling trailer is half old footage from other movies, that's not promising. And I feel like Disney has gone about handling Star Wars in a very weird way, instead of treating it like the magical thing it was originally, by having sparse films but a lot of lore still established in the universe and other mediums. They did the opposite and did a whole bunch of movies all at once, and have kind of faltered with any side stuff, and stuff like games haven't really been coming out outside of just cash grab, nostalgia bait. And I can see people's frustration with this trilogy. I still like Force Awakens and The Last Jedi more than the prequels, but that's because they aren't the prequels. You know, I've talked about The Force Awakens a little bit, and how I'm upset that it's basically A New Hope 2.0, but I still think The Last Jedi was still at least a good first watch. While on subsequent viewings, The Last Jedi may not be as fun, because the whole shtick of that movie is subversion of expectation, and once the joke is told to you, or once the magic is ruined for you, it doesn't leave new viewings to be as exciting. There's still a lot of good stuff in The Last Jedi to me. I like all the stuff in the Snoke chamber. I don't mind the killing of Snoke. I've talked about The Last Jedi a bit on a Carversation, but I like Luke in the movie. You know, there's a lot of elements to The Last Jedi that I still think set it above the prequels in a lot of ways. But I do not have high hopes for The Rise of the Skywalker. I don't think it's going to be good, and it's going to leave a bitter taste on this trilogy to me, you know? But maybe that's just me. I do feel for George Lucas, though, as a creative person. You know, I feel like if I made Star Wars, or if I made something like Star Wars and had ideas for it, even if they may not have been the best ideas, I would have liked to have been talked to. I would have liked to have been a consultant, you know? I would have liked to have helped them construct a clear, concise story to help tie it better to what I originally wanted. But again, they gave George Lucas billions of dollars, so he's set for life. He doesn't have to do anything ever again. He hasn't really had to do anything ever again since the 80s, but he really doesn't have to do anything ever again now. But yeah, I'm torn. I'm really torn. I hope going forward after this trilogy, Disney does a better job with Star Wars as far as being universally better treated. I hope that the games and TV shows they have lined up do a good job at fleshing out the world. You know, I liked Rogue One because it felt like a different type of movie in the Star Wars universe. I still haven't seen Solo, mostly because I've heard it is a fucking mess. But I do want to watch it someday, because I like the character of Han Solo, and I like Star Wars. So we'll see how I feel about that when I do watch it. But yeah, I mean, that's my take on it. You know, that's my opinion on this whole George Lucas thing. I feel like it's upsetting to hear, but like also it's understandable, because his ideas were not universally loved, and Disney is a money-making company. They need to justify those billions of dollars they spent on it. But what do you think? What do you think about creative integrity? What do you think of Star Wars? What do you think of this whole Bob Iger scenario? What do you think of the Rise of the Skywalker? Are you still excited for it? Do you have hope for it? Let me know in those comments down below. If there's a thing you'd like for me to talk about on a Carversation as well, let me know, and I'll talk about it in my car. But that's gonna wrap it today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your support on here and on Patreon. Special thanks to the patrons. If you'd like to join their ranks, link to the Patreon is in the description. If you like the music, gaming, and general nerdery content I bring, be sure to subscribe and like this video if you like Star Wars discussions. I have been Viral Rack. You guys have good days, lives, and situations. And I'll see you another day.